playing in the bedroom is a great place to play, right? Like there's inherently like an energy that we go into when we're engaged with lovemaking that it involves our human animal part, right? So it's like having dinner and all of a sudden like making a kitten noise would be, it's fine, but maybe a little harder for some people. But like being in the bedroom and like being with your partner and looking at them and going meow or like that it's more acceptable in the bedroom to play in that space.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are here today with an incredibly special guest, one of our really, really dearest friends. She's already been on, Alexandra Roxo. She gave, really, I think, one of the favorite podcast episodes we've done, the Valentine special, where she threw out some deeply sensual stuff and tips and things for people to become more connected and intimate, and she's going to do more of that here today.
Yes, we love her so much, and we've grown so much with her in the last 2 years. If you joined us in Seattle, the last time we were in Seattle, she was with us for our amazing workshops with couples, and she's just near and dear to us, so we will continue working with her a lot in the future, and hopefully our next in-person retreat she can join us on.
Post-corona.
Yes.
All right. I think it's time for the review. All right. I love how that looks on the screen. Straight tears listening to your podcast, especially the one about loss. Your podcast and the messages you share on social media are so inspiring that I can see the growth in myself from listening and implementing what you share. You and your husband are special people, and I feel forever grateful for finding you because your light, honesty, and compassion drive me to be better every day. So much love. Thank you so much. It's a screenshot, so I don't actually have the name for you. If this is your review, do me a favor and send us a DM at ignited.me or me at Dr. D. Jaffe or at sophie.jaffe and let us know that it's you, and you will get a very, very special Ignited and Philosophy Care package.
We always send out a magical package to whoever's review we read on the air. So where you listen to podcasts, if you write it on your Instagram, we may take it and take a screenshot. If you give an awesome review and we read it on air, you will get this package too. So make sure that you give us some love. And also the way that we grow, the way that we get noticed, the way that we can give you more of what you love is by leaving reviews, by giving us 5-star reviews, by sharing, by sending an episode that inspires you to a friend or family member, and really dig back into old episodes and give us some love. Really take it in, because we have so much content and so many amazing interviews. And as you know, at the end of every month, we go deep. We do a going deep episode, just a D&I, where we really, really dive in. So
amen.
Go back and review. Here's an amazing quote from Alexandra from her book. We are in need of an uprising of bold, wild women who have reclaimed their bodies and stand in their sacred sexuality for them. As women, we need to liberate our voices, step into total security within ourselves, and fully own our raw, sensual power, finally letting go of the shame, guilt, denial, and repression that's been put upon us. So good.
Yeah, what I love about Alexandra's work in this intimacy, sexuality area is it's not like anything I've heard before. It's not like, why don't you find lingerie you like wearing? I don't know why I'm doing this weird voice. That was a very weird voice to do for y'all. But I feel like we've had the same pedantic advice over and over and over.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Sometimes when I work with couples and they're having issues, they literally will say this to me. They'll say, don't tell us we got to go take salsa classes. Literally as if there's all these couples therapists out there. They're saying, oh, weird in the bedroom, go take salsa classes.
Yeah,
Her
and
thing is different.
Well, yeah, but also the funny thing is that the salsa dancing I kind of get, because it's you're in your hips, right? You're in your body. You're in your, like, that lower chakra where it's all like sensuality and also pain and trauma. Like, we store so much in that. So I kind of understand the essence of why people would recommend that. They're just not explaining that part. So if you don't like salsa, or you're not interested in going dancing, then there might be something else that you can tap into. And that's what we talk about in this episode, is really tangible tips, but also just like rediscovering, or maybe discovering for the first time, what does turn you on. And once you can find that, access that, and then share it with your partner. And if not, then just on your own, enjoy that and become more attractive and begin to attract more abundance into your life once you're locked into that.
Yeah.
So excited to share this with you. Her book is out. Go get a copy. The link is in the show notes, and enjoy this episode.
Amen. See you on the other side. Hey everybody, D here, and I wanted to tell you about these new Blue Blocks glasses that I've been wearing. If you're on any of our chats, you might have actually literally seen me wear them, because the ones I wear have these yellow lenses. And I gotta tell you, I've tried other Blue Blocker glasses before, and they felt okay, right? I felt a little bit of a shift in the way that the screens that I'm staring at every single day affected me. But then I heard about Blue Blocks, and these guys really went to task. We just interviewed their founder. He's an amazing, amazing guy who really wanted to understand, how does light affect vision? And you know, I'm like the science guy here. So I wanted to tell you that there's nothing I put on. So they have Blue Blocks has 3 different levels of their lenses. Blue light, which are kind of like the ones you see a lot of people wear around. They're clear and help with the blue light coming in from screens. My favorites are the Summer Glow lenses. They're yellow lenses, and I swear I put these things on during the day, and I can actually feel my anxiety go down. And that's what they're meant for. It's like the combination of color therapy and blue light blocking at the same time. And then on top of those, they created the Sleep Plus lens that is almost like a reddish orange. It blocks out almost all of the blue light that's coming your way, and so it's really, really great right before sleep. But here's the thing. These are amazing glasses that have actually been tested to block out the right frequencies of blue light. So if you're like me, especially during this time when we're staring at screens and Zoom and meetings and everything is happening online, you want to get these glasses, because I feel it. Literally, my sleep is better. My anxiety throughout the day is better when I put these things on. They're amazing. And we got you guys a special code. If you use the code IGNITED, just capital IGNTD, you'll get not only free shipping, but also 15% off. And these things are coming all the way from Australia, so you know you want to save on that shipping. All right, guys, check these out. They're amazing. This is the only company that actually backs their blue light blocking by scientific evidence that the right frequencies are being blocked. It's going to help change your life. All right, everybody, welcome back to the convo fireside chat in my office downstairs. So no fire. It's hot outside.
It is.
So kind of
we have a fire pit. So
yeah,
We have a fire inside.
yeah.
No,
We have fire inside.
we do. We have lots of fire
She's
inside.
teaching us.
We are bringing back one of our favorite guests. Man, Alexandra, you were on early, relatively, in the podcast. Like when we were just figuring out what to do, and you came for a special Valentine's episode that is still one of everybody's favorite episodes, because we went like on Valentine's, everybody's like, "Hey, get me chocolate." You're like, "No, fuck better." It was like, "Oh, I like that much better for Valentine's."
I don't even remember what I said.
And then we're now like 2 years later, and now from teaching people in a very small way on our podcast how to fuck better, you've written a book about it.
Well, yes, my book is called Fuck Like a Goddess. However, I'm going to just say that it's more than physical fucking, right? So the title in itself is like me asking my audience to be smart and to also have like a twinkle in their eye, and also to be kind of cheeky with me, because it's not literal. And, we're such literalists as like Western mind people. And I like to play with people. So I like to disrupt energy. So to even put the word fuck next to the word goddess, it has an inherent disruption of like the way people's mind think of like divine and fuck. And then like, I love the word fuck because there's like a passion to it that doesn't exist when you're like, me and my person are making love, and we're having sex, which
We
is
got
so,
we got intimate time.
Yeah.
yeah.
The hell is that? That's like
Like,
that's the
fuck,
least turning on thing that you could
Yeah.
ever do.
yeah. And there's like, there's a spirituality to the word fuck for me, which might be a stretch for some people. So bear with me. But there's this element of like making love to everything. Like, I just want to like fucking do that. It's like, I just like fuck that. Or like, oh, I just want to fuck. Like there's this, we use it in culture in so many different ways that goes beyond actually just talking about making love or sex or whatever. And so fucking like a goddess, it's like, making love to your life and letting your life make love to you and saying like, fuck that. And like, I want to be fucked and like, fuck you. So it encapsulates all of that kind of energy, not just the like lovemaking part, but the part that's also like, I don't give a fuck, right? Like that word holds a lot. And I just find it to be a really fun word where the English language can get kind of boring, but I like that word.
Yeah. I find it like anytime that I say it, I feel like I'm fully activated. Like it doesn't have to be like a positive or negative thing. It's just fully in it, fully activated.
It's visceral.
Yeah.
It's visceral.
Yeah, it's alive.
We're making love is nice, but you're not like,
yeah, it's sweet.
oof, you're not gonna like hold on to something to balance yourself because somebody said, oh, we made really good love yesterday. You're gonna be like, oh,
yeah.
Like we fucked for 3 hours and I couldn't see straight. You're like, oh. Tell me more, please. Right. So
exactly.
you named the book, and I totally get the broader sense. The multi-layers. And hopefully we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can today. The reason I wanted to kind of focus on it was I think that was a less traditional way to even introduce you to our audience back then when we're talking about Valentine's, and everybody's idea of Valentine's like a flower and a chocolates thing. If I did that to Sophie, she would throw me out of the house and say, try again next year. I'll see you back then. But that speaks more to my wife than a lot of other things, right? Wouldn't you be like, wait, you showed up with flowers and
yeah, it's
like,
just too cliche. I mean, you have to work a little harder than that. Like,
yeah. So that's the first layer. And you talked about sexual.
But I also will say that I love flowers and I love chocolate. So
yeah, but just not on Valentine's Day.
Not on Valentine's Day.
I love it. Right. Which speaks to the point of what we're talking about here, because as we were leading into this conversation, you do intimacy work with Sophie and I. So you help us in our actual intimacy work. And so that's, I think, an important thing to say on the front end. But when we were speaking yesterday in a session, we were talking about this need to create polarity in a world that, and you use that word, and we can get into the origin of that with us. But we're actually kind of living in a world that for a very long time has tried to reduce the polarity and make everything more equal. And so we were talking before about how around masculinity, and I'll talk about men in the context of masculinity, but men are not the only ones that have masculine elements to them. But let's say in the more masculine men, that has created some almost like emasculation or the inability to rise and really connect to their masculine. And almost the feedback that I understand has had to come up is where women being resourced and having abilities had to rise up and through equality and all the good things that have come out of that in society in all areas of life has sort of had to come up with their own masculine. Like women are strong. They just have to take care of shit if the men weren't going to do it themselves. And one of the things that I'm realizing more and more is there are a lot of places where that's good. But when we are talking about intimate connection back to like the more sexual, physical, as you will say often while we talk about this juicy part of intimacy, having that the two people be equal actually creates a real problem around the attraction and that juiciness of the sexuality. And so we might have to get smarter about this, like you're asking your audience to get in general, about it's okay to play and be more masculine in certain areas and less masculine in others, and let different parts of you come up.
Yeah, and even let's like get in a little bit more deeply to the word masculine, because I appreciate sort of the, the binary in certain moments, but I love like the bouquet of each, I like the rainbow spectrum of like that there's so many different shades within, say, black or within white or within red, right? Like you could say like, oh, Alexandra loves red, but like which red, like there's so many reds. So, when we talk about like these parts of our humanness that we've maybe neglected or been conditioned out of us, right? As men, as women, or as people that identify as maybe trans or on a different a different space on the spectrum. It's like creating our human being as an alchemical soup. We talked about this in our session a bit yesterday, where we notice like what would actually make the soup a little bit more fun or more deep or more nuanced, right? So for a man who has grown up to say be sweet in his feelings and be a really nice guy, right? Like, so he and his soup of being really could probably use some fucking animal wolf. He could probably use to be that kind of like carnal, right? And this is like a super generic example, but it works and it's true, right? I've dated many men who are not in touch with that because why? Because, well, that aspect of, let's say, humanity, or we can say masculinity, had a big shadow side. So it actually raped, abused, like a lot of humans, killed. So now we find ourselves in this very like heavily politicized moment in general, where it's like, it is scary for men to allow themselves, specifically men and all of us, to be kind of the wide spectrum, because if we haven't investigated the shadow of some of these elements of self, then we can't actually play with them. So it's like, we have had to move through this evolution perfectly. I actually think it's perfect, right? Like, so, you have that kind of like, divide and conquer, and I'm just gonna like rape and pillage, that didn't really work. And now you have like what we're talking about, like maybe the element of masculine that's like, let me be PC, and you want to work, great, okay, no, I don't want to like come on to you too strong or whatever. And so now it's like kind of like he lost his balls altogether. But it's like, so now, like, let's say if we're just talking about like that wolf energy or whatever, it could be like warrior, like how does that get invited back in a way that is elevated, it's exalted, it's not coming from the shadow part, because then that would be a regression. And this actually takes care. So it's scary. So maybe most men would go, you know what, I don't even want to play with that wolf energy or like that warrior energy, because like it's too scary. My wife's probably going to get pissed. She's going to be like, why are you treating me like that? Like, be nice. But the energy, like we're talking about that, like really delicious, sexy energy, like it does come when we do exalt some of those places in the human psyche that we have been told are bad or scary, or that created too much suffering in the past, and therefore we must, really push them into the shadow. That doesn't benefit us at all. It creates a collapse inside of us. So, on a more kind of practical level, it's like in a couple like me working with you guys, it's like you're both awake and you're both in this process of wanting to play in these places. You're not doing it unconsciously, you're doing it consciously. So it's like if we play with, a D bringing back some of his fucking carnal, just like, meat eating, like part of himself, like, then he hasn't regressed into being like a 2-year-old, like, barbarian.
Yeah, I mean, and this is all beautiful, and I'm so grateful for all of it. But for someone who's listening that's maybe not in a relationship, or maybe someone that is in a relationship but is scared to, like you said, that man might be scared or the woman might be scared to all of a sudden shift and change. Like if I were a man, I'd be scared to spring this on my wife or my girlfriend all of a sudden, because like I've been raped. Like I wouldn't love that out of the blue. So how do we bridge this gap and transform? Do you kind of bring your partner along for the ride and you read your book together? Like what would you suggest?
Yeah. Well, I think this is where we use our skills of actually like communication and consent, right? Like those are really important skills. So like if a couple is feeling maybe like their eroticism has dried up, or their sort of fuck energy towards each other or just desire towards each other is like lacking, then that might be a conversation of like, hey, are you willing to play a little bit with this? Like, I'm noticing that, we're not really like having sex as much. Maybe it's quite simple.
Or
So
it's
then
gotten
it's like,
stale.
yeah. And then it's like, okay, let's play. Well, that's a conversation. That starts with a conversation, right? So, and playing in the bedroom is a great place to play, right? Like there's inherently like an energy that we go into when we're engaged with lovemaking that it involves our human animal part, right? So it's like having dinner and all of a sudden like making a kitten noise would be, it's fine, but maybe a little harder for some people. But like being in the bedroom and like being with your partner and looking at them and going meow or like that it's more acceptable in the bedroom to play in that space. So when
So
we're talking
create a
about that erotic
container.
space,
Yeah.
yeah, and to sit with your partner and go, okay, like this is the hard part though. I think the hardest part is not in the playing and the experimenting together. I think the hardest part is sitting down and saying like, I'm not feeling it lately, are you?
I agree. I agree. And as someone who has a lot of married friends who they have kids, they have busy lives. Dad definitely works, mom might work. Like the majority of them have very like vanilla, redundant sex. And we do too very often. We have the other as well, but we have to work actively and we're on this path together. So if someone comes, like a wife comes to you or finds this book, the most important thing you're saying is communicate, sit down with your partner, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, and just talk about what you're feeling without kind of blaming the other, like you're this, but instead like this is what we're experiencing. And do you feel that too?
Yeah. And I would first start with yourself. So if somebody comes to me and they're like, ugh, me and my husband, we're not really like having fun and blah, 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 then I will first help the woman get in touch with her internal eros, her eroticism again, filling that up. So like replenishing that sort of dry internal landscape. And that is really fun. And I love coaching women in that. And I've coached women with 3 kids who have a PhD who work all day, all the things. And I love watching them sort of, it's not like it takes that much, but it helps to have a guide who's like, who can see what lights you up and turns you on. And then it might be super simple how you keep kind of activating that energy. Because when you have to sit, do a bunch of crazy woo-woo practices every day, you just start to attune yourself to the energy of the erotic again. And that it's an art, and it's something that's so personal for every person. Like
I think one of the things that I'm hearing that is important is, first of all, for the conversation to be about the payoff and not necessarily about, hey, we've been having really shitty sex for 3 years. Sure. But rather like, hey, I'd love to bring more fun and excitement into our sex life. I can't fathom, as a guy, my partner coming and going, hey, so I want to imagine more new, fun, exciting ways to fuck. Are you down? And me being like, nah, kind of good. Let me see. Like, as if that conversation comes, especially if a woman is connected to the erotic undertone and the current that would bring a conversation like that on, I think, and this is more as I'm being exposed to your work and to David Deda's work and all this other stuff, that like there are people of masculine sort of like tendencies that are just out there like craving this. We're looking for it, but because we've equalized so many areas of life, we've also equalized them at home. We talked about like women losing like lust, etc., even in their everyday life and in the workspace. I think I understand why that is. We're fine, as the Me Too movement took hold, etc. Like it seems like when women were even trying to control it on a regular basis in work, there was still abuse and ongoing, terrible, harmful, traumatizing actions on the part of men in their lives over and over and over. So I could see a cycle whereby women at work trying to become equal to men in terms of what they can do with work had to turn it all down.
Yes, and this is a really, really important piece to the conversation because there is a part that is healing. There's a part of this conversation that involves healing because when we're talking about opening ourselves up, opening our sex up, so many people have been molested as children. It's so common. So many women have been raped. It's so common. So, there's something that happens when we've gone through certain abuses that part of us does sort of shut down erotically. And the partner has to be willing to hold and it's not that they become the healer. That becomes a part of the soup, and it can actually become a part of the soup in an erotic way. Not that you have to replay anything or something like that. It's not about that, but that there's a place where opening past that hurt, even if it's just in a like if it comes up where you're just like, fuck, am I ever going to be able to orgasm again like I used to before I was hurt or before I was, overweight or before I gave birth or whatever it is. But allowing that pain to come up and through, and the partner being there for you in that moment becomes healing. So there is an element to deep, deep erotic intimacy that is healing. And so, one time I had this vision that I wanted to do a workshop of like men becoming like orgasm shamans for women who want to heal through certain griefs or abuses, and that the men are trained to just kind of be like, let it out, babe, like I got you. Because of all the times that I think women want to like cry during sex and we don't quite know why we want to cry and we try to like hide it, but really our body is shedding trauma, it's releasing past, and it's so fucking dope when you have a partner that's just like, give it to me, and just like, let's fuck harder so that this grief leaves you. That's a whole piece of eroticism. That's a whole piece of lovemaking and intimacy. And that in itself requires two people being awake, because if a man's like, oh my God, why is she crying? Oh my God, what's wrong, honey? Then she's gonna go, oh, forget it. Like it's like she's gonna lose that gorgeousness.
Yeah. That happened when we started out. We mentioned before that there was trauma, et cetera, and earlier in your relationship. I don't feel like I ran, but I didn't know how to hold it. And I definitely didn't know how to reach deeper and go, hey, let's like allow that source to release.
Well, no, I mean, it got so bad that like that became the blame almost. Adi was like, well, the reason part of the reason I cheated, like she was really damaged, and she like, not in a mean way, but in just insensitive, not knowing. He's like, what was I supposed to do? She cried when we had sex. She was clearly damaged. So I may as well go find someone else to not put more pressure on her. Like, what? All I wanted was to be held and then heal together. Like, you're studying to get your PhD in psychology. Help a sister out. Like,
but this is the thing that's beyond psychology, because psychology is like a masculine linear thinking. This is more in like the energy and the shamanic, and it's the witchy, and it's like very feminine. And like, he just didn't know.
He didn't know what to do with my feelings. He had no barometer for that.
This is where, like, I feel like when men, it's like doing martial arts, right? You watch a samurai movie or something. You have a sword coming at your head and you stay still. So, men used to train in these certain things. And then what? Your woman is crying? You're going to freak out? No, you've had a sword coming at your head. But men nowadays don't really go through any of that.
And I think that brings back that conversation of like, it's almost funny when I was talking to somebody about a lecture or maybe the Way of the Superior Man or something book. One of the things that comes up, and it's what came up for me the first time I started reading this book, was a lot of the conversations we're having right now are very like non-PC, right? Because even the suggestion to some extent that women should or can or would benefit from refeminizing or whatever, however you want it, getting reconnected to that feminine energy, that deep feminine energy. I know your wording for this will be different than mine, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave that hanging here, and you can deal with it in a second. And for men to get reconnected to their carnal, like, I am man, hear me roar energy, there's a lot of touchiness around it, like you said. And I want to respect that, because there are arenas where what we're saying is, you don't have to bring this, maybe when you become masterful at it and you can control it, etc. But what we're saying is, just because there are now areas of life where we have depolarized and we have made things more neutral in terms of gender relations, doesn't mean you fucking want it everywhere. It doesn't mean, okay, well, I guess now in marriage, we have sex when we want to have babies. And other than that, we just sort of are really good roommates who like each other a lot because I don't want to, I'm going to say it in the most obscene sense, and I'll probably get some shit for it, but that's fine. I don't want to make like a whore out of my wife because I want to do all these crazy, sexy things to her. So I just won't. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's different layers to this because it's truly not, it's not a just masculine, feminine thing. And it's like, I think there's a piece of it that is like really ripping out the puritanical conditioning. And that's beyond, right? Like that's beyond any gender. It's like we live in a country where we have been taught that sex was a certain way and that it's bad. We do it behind closed doors or it's only private or this isn't this. The porn industry is so booming. The amount of money spent on porn, I don't have the number in front of me right now, but I talk about this number in my book. It's huge because people are not in touch with their internal erotic nature. And so a fast click on the internet fulfills it, but it actually dampens the whole sensitivity to the body. So all these people are walking around and they're completely desensitized to actually what is erotic and what is really sensual for them. So I don't even think it's like our main problem is like masculine and feminine kind of like renegotiations. I think it's like the space where we lost touch with ourselves as erotic, sensual beings. We're productive beings. We're good, bad. We're like getting things done. And the element of like what is our deepest turn on and what is erotic has been, really kind of wrung out of us, right, by this world we live in. So for me, the kind of rewilding that can exist for any gender is a return to our animal and what is erotic for each of us. And that it's really beyond gender because, I really love men right now, but I've also loved women and I've also loved trans people. And, I've had polarity in all of those relationships, even same-sex relationships. So they've gone beyond masculine, feminine, but the thing that has been so kind of cathartic for me is actually claiming my erotic nature, even if it's really weird or really disgusting as per society's standards, right? And actually elevating that in myself and saying like, this is really beautiful. That takes us looking at our shame, guilt, and disgust around the female body, around the male body, around, body fluids, around taboo. Like there's all these elements in the paintbrush, in the paint palette of our creating gorgeous erotic intimacy. We've taken away so many of the paints.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
many of them.
Doing this work is just saying, okay, I want to put more notes in the music that I play. I want to put more colors on the palette. And why wouldn't we want to?
Yeah. It's beautiful. Do you have some tangible, maybe like tips or exercises for anyone? Maybe you have separate for women, separate for men. Like it could be 1, it could be 5, but some ways that like today someone could tap into this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always love, because this is like one of the fun things that I love to do is just like to just start paying attention to where your desire goes. So I am always like a curious human. I'm a Gemini rising for any astrology buffs listening, but curiosity drives me. And so I've always been curious about like, what is the thing that turns on this weird human that I am, right? Like what actually turns me on? And so I like to look for that in art, in movies, in literature, in like erotic fiction, short stories. So you could go on Amazon Prime and say, okay, I want to watch a movie about, this week I watched a movie about a geisha because I wanted to tap into the eroticism of a geisha and how just like the delicacy of that, or like French courtesan. So I love this type of thing. But for you, it could be very different. It could be the eroticism of like, eating a peach that really fucking turns you on as the peach juice is dripping down your chin, but knowing what those things are. Right? It's like knowing your instrument. So you get to start paying attention. Like, what the fuck turns me on? What are my top 10 turn-ons, right? And I'm not talking about simple stuff in the bedroom. Like, I like my nipples being bitten, right? I do. But
but also, it brings up a good point, because I guess what I asked was, what would a person do? And yesterday I was eating a mango, and that's one of my things. Like that's like drips down my face, drips down my face. It's like, it's not quite orgasmic, but it is a very erotic experience, especially living in Southern California. It's warm. I'm like, messy. It's like the smell and the taste and all of it. It's like, since I was 16 years old, that's a very like big trigger for me to like wake up all my senses and feel alive. And so I invited Adi into the moment. I'm like, take a bite of this. And he's like, takes a bite and walks away. And I'm like, it's not. And my point is, there's nothing wrong with that at all. My point is what turns me on isn't necessarily what turns him on. And that's okay. And what you're instructing is that we go within ourselves and find those parts of ourselves that we can tap into that do turn us on. And if you have a partner, then you can share that with them. Like I didn't say anything. I was
and even get connected to that part of you that got turned on and kind of like start exploring that thing. Because you know what, I was right before you started. So I thought of the same example, the mango example from yesterday. And when you asked the question, I felt like you were really almost like removed from it. It was almost like a clinical question. Like, so I'm wondering, that's when you first asked the question. And then I don't know if you noticed this, Alexandra, but when you started telling the story of the mango,
the peach, she had the peach.
Well, no, you.
Oh,
you.
yeah,
I'm talking about you, Sophie.
Yeah.
No, I'm very. When Sophie asked the question, do you have any tips? It felt very clinical.
Yeah.
When you started telling the story about the mango, your whole body softened and you got kind of excited.
Me watching her?
Sophie.
Okay.
Sophie did. I saw Sophie going and reliving this experience from yesterday, and it's so easy in this conversation to try to stay clinical because of that puritanical thing that you mentioned, Alexandra. Like, so when I am getting fucked in the bedroom, please let me know what would feel good.
Totally.
And then
I'm turned on by hearing Sophie talk about that because my body is going, and I'm going, I just want to lick the juice off her face. And I'm going, I hope you guys started making out right after. And I hope that she like came up to you and went and like kind of licked you with her juicy, sticky, that.
He walked away. He didn't have the same experience, but I continued with my own experience because I'm not going to be offended that his experience isn't mine. I was just like, okay.
No,
you didn't see it. You didn't see it in the moment as a sensual, sexual.
No, I
experience.
do. It is not for us. I wasn't thinking it would be for us. I just thought, oh my God, let me let you in on this. You just didn't have the same experience because I also have an association since I was 16. I would come here and visit my dad in LA and I'd be standing in their kitchen, this beautiful kitchen in the Hollywood Hills in my bikini from the pool and like just go into a mango. So that is my experience with all of that history tied in. He doesn't have that. It's just a mango to him. And
you can invite him in next time by sticking your tongue out and just licking him or whatever, right? And that's the fun part. When we all have these private little erotic moments with ourselves. Like we're full of them. Like that's part of our sensuality as humans. And so inviting in the partner without having to explain it, right? Like inviting them into it. Like maybe he goes into the bathroom and he sees you like, covering yourself with like rose oil. And like, instead of you just going, hey, are we going to bed soon? Or da-da-da-da-da, you sort of go even more deeply with your rubbing of self while making eye contact with him. So you invite him into that moment instead of making it go into a casual moment, right? Where like, okay, now my private erotic moment is done and we are going to talk about our plans tomorrow. No.
This is so key for married couples because we've been together 16 years.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned, was it rose oil? The number of times that as a couple you've walked in after 15, 16 years to the bathroom and seen your person naked is, I don't know, it would be hard to count, but it's in the thousands, right? And so to have the wherewithal to make one of those moments special is almost like the key to what we're talking about because you want the sex and you want the intimacy, you want you want that part of your sex to be special. And I think we too often just relegate it to the normal because we're kind of like, okay, well, we've done this hundreds of times.
this is a part of the American problem. You know, it's like, for me, my personal, I can always get on a little rant about this, but, you know, I grew up partially in Brazil. My father's from Brazil, and like Brazilian women, like, get ready in a room, like, and I'm being very generalizing, so forgive me if you're a Brazilian woman and you're like, that's not my experience. But like the women in my family, for instance, you know, they had their own little place that they got dressed and they did their makeup, and like the men were never in the room for those moments, ever. They always came out in a very ceremonial way, and the men kind of received them, you know, for dinner, etc. And there's a very genderized and very misogynistic at times in macho culture. There's has a lot of shadow, but I appreciated some of these elements of the way women tended to themselves behind closed doors and kept like some mystery and some privacy, and that actually does create polarity. And like, I'm kind of funny, like I don't like to like brush my teeth in front of my person. Like I like to preserve, at least, you know, for as long as possible, preserve like some elements of mystery, right? And like to go like, okay, I'm gonna go get dressed in this other room, or like, hey, well, we're on vacation, and like, you know, why don't you go down to the bar downstairs and have a drink while I'm up here getting ready, so that you get this gorgeous moment of unveiling yourself. You know,
Love
these
that.
moments are magic, but we've gone into like the busy get shit done mode, and we've lost a lot of our artful way of living. And we can look to Brazil, we can look to France, we can look to Italy, we can watch you know, films that remind us of the way people used to interact, because there is some magic to that we have lost, especially with the virtual space.
I think that's so powerful. To remember the whole like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, just because there are dark elements we're trying to eradicate or remove from the male, female, masculine, feminine kind of interaction patterns doesn't mean just start completely from scratch and let's try to create something new. We can draw on elements that worked. And again, right, Sophie, like I remember, I don't know when this happened, but I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, like you went away in the bathroom and like came out wearing something sexy on purpose. Like that, I think it did exactly what you wanted to do, which was like, it drew my attention in a second. The moment I saw it, I was focused on nothing but Sophie. Like I might be a busy motherfucker, but like my wife comes out looking like that. And it's like, I don't remember what I have to do tomorrow. It doesn't matter. There's like a momentary focus that takes over that is really precious, especially in a relationship that's been this long. But it's almost like we don't offer enough opportunities, or we don't put enough focus on creating those opportunities to make that magic happen.
I also just want to say, like, to anyone who is married and feeling stale and like, what? You put on what? Like, it took me like a full hour of the show that we were watching or the movie or whatever we were doing to motivate to get, because I'm tired. I have all the things and the people and the babies and the work and the house and the laundry. And I'm tired. I just want to go to sleep. But what I really want is to connect with my husband in that moment. So I prioritized, and I got up and I thought about where the lingerie was, and I went into the closet, and I knew he was going to be stealing. And it is not easy to get out of bad habits. And it's not easy to be a little bit uncomfortable when you're so comfortable. I'm under the covers, so cozy. And then I get up and do this thing. Like, it's not like I just do that automatically. So I just want you all to know, like, that's part of why we're seeing Alexandra, is because us too. We're normal too. And we have these problems of getting out of our own way. But I think what Alexandra is sharing so beautifully is like, let there be a little mystery. It doesn't take a lot. And tap into your own inner goddess and your own sensuality and your own eroticism, whatever that looks like, no matter what society says. If it's beautiful or ugly or weird, even better. And like your partner, Adi and I know firsthand from working with couples, a lot of couples don't communicate about what they like or don't like in the bedroom. Like, let's start there. Just start communicating, because that's even a turn on, to be able to speak openly and vulnerably about what you like and don't like and past experiences without any ego involved or jealousy. Just like, yeah, I did this once and it was so hot. Like, cool, let's recreate that. Or not. But the point is just being able to talk and be yourself and be held is so beautiful. And all we all want. It's all we all want, is just to be accepted. And and wanted.
Yeah. And I really commend you for getting up and putting on the lingerie. Like, that's actually a really huge moment of like your commitment and devotion to the relationship. And it's really, devotion is a word that I love. And then, it's like, are you in devotion to like something bigger than the two of you, and making art, and like not just becoming sort of comfortable and stale? And I think we all have that spark inside of us. So even if it's feeling kind of dull, it's like, find something inside of you, find it and hold it tight. Let's not forget like this gorgeous, exquisite human experience that we have. And that we're able to have those nights of beautiful passion where we forget all of the crap that's happening, and we get a little vacation from the mundane with our partner, where we like go to some deep, like psychedelic, delicious, wild carnal realms. Like, why would we not be doing that? Why would we be choosing Netflix instead? It's habit. You're right. It's habit. And it's like, not that you have to do that all the time, but
Right.
whatever block stands between you and that, that's the thing to sort of start to play with. Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it, your body weight? Is it, whatever it is, to just find that and go, okay, cool. I'm willing to, because of my devotion to love and to the erotic, and to God, if you want to introduce God or spirit into it, which I love to have as a part of it. But because of that, I'm willing to look at whatever's blocking me from touching this part of myself.
Yeah. I heard you, Sophie, talking about couples talking about it. And that is something we've heard in many couples, right? That they've never actually had a discussion about it. One of the things, and I'd love maybe for you to address this, Alexandra, is you talked about talking is the second level, sort of like, okay, we're in our heads. We're going to have a discussion about how we like to fuck, and we're going to share that. And now it's nice. It's better than, first of all, it's better than not talking,
Yes.
right? It's better than not having any communication about it. Secondly, it is better than the like old school macho bimbo relationship. Like, I'm gonna take you. Oh, okay. That's all I'm good for. Like that. It's better than that. But there's a higher level. And I think I want you to talk about that a little bit, because talking about it is great. But I think every man listening right now will know what I mean when I say your woman saying, hey, I really like it when you take me from behind and hold my hips, is different than like your woman like turning around, like showing you her ass, and then like looking at you and just giving you this look and go like, like you understand the point in both. In one of them, you're like, oh, that's interesting. I'll next time when we're having sex, I'll think about that. And the other one, you like drop the dish, run, scream behind, like somebody take care of the babies, and like just, it's almost like you have this thing that just connects to you on a deeper level.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a few pieces to this. One, I do want to just acknowledge that like, it is bringing in a concept that doesn't come from me, and we're sort of dancing around the concept, but I'll just kind of throw it directly in here. And it's from the teacher, David Data, who has written brilliant books and whose work has been close to my heart for a long time. But he has a concept around first, second, and third stage relationships. And it's written about very beautifully in his book, Intimate Communion. In the first stage relationship being like kind of like a 1950s relationship, like maybe we saw our grandparents, like man, woman, traditional roles, like probably haven't healed through their trauma, drink a martini and like, watch football or whatever. And then the second stage relationship being more of a space of like, let's process through our emotions. Let's go to couples therapy. Let's talk about everything. Like, you do the dishes tonight. I do the dishes tomorrow. We got to keep it easy and simple, but that becomes very neutral sexually or erotically. And then at the third stage, that you enter into like a more of a magical, mysterious, numinous space where it's it almost looks more like the first stage, like kind of more like it sort of looks and like caveman-y kind of behavior, but it's like elevated into like a more godlike space. So it's hard to describe that and to put that into words, but it's more about that love is really coursing through everything. So me going, oh, I really love spankings would sort of be irrelevant, because I don't want to be spanked unless in the moment when my partner and I are like just really deep in lovemaking, we're so primed in the moment that, he's going to either do that or I'm going to lift my, ass and just look at him like, oh, and see what happens. But it would sort of degrade the moment for me to go, hey, would you spank me? Like, that to me, that would be like, oh my God, you're like peeing in the church, but there was a moment in my life where like it felt really important for me to ask for that. So, it's different stages of our evolution. And like, if a woman has never said, hey, I like spankings, like I claimed that very much for a while. And now I wouldn't necessarily say it unless a partner asked me, but I would allow the moment because I'm so embodied in the present moment, tied to my breath, connected to my partner, that whatever biting, moaning, like sucking, like everything would just be coming from the truth of the moment. It wouldn't be coming from our head going, oh, maybe I should try this with him. Like, I haven't done that in a while. Like, it would just be this desire moving through me. But, that's what takes practice, because you're kind of letting your animal back out of the cage after your animal's been put in the cage. And you're going, okay, like, I can trust the animal now. Like, but like, you might end up with some bruises,
Well, and also some animals most animals that we're talking about here have never been let out. It's not like, remember before, we're talking like ancestors.
Yeah.
When you say before, like most of the people listening, most of the society that they know doesn't encourage this behavior. So we want to tell people that too. It's just like, it's not like, remember who you were, how you used to be. Like most of us never were like that because we were told that it was wrong or dirty or bad.
From a very young age. Yeah. And I think essentially we all had like this place before we became conscious or started healing, where we were probably like had some elements of that freedom or that sort of expression before we were like, oh shit, like that's too much, or that's too wild, or that's too fucked up, or whatever. So I think that it definitely exists on a spectrum for people, and that there are people that have never touched those places. That's why it's like going to a dance club or going to an acting class, or like, doing some sort of different experience. Why people crave going to Burning Man, like they crave like just wearing a costume and dancing, like, because it's so fun and so like free, there's so much freedom there. So I definitely feel like when I'm coaching people, whether it's a couple, it's like you have to be tapped into some of these elements within yourself, and like, where does your erotic lie? Where does your freedom lie? Where's your shadow? Like, where are the parts that are still really sticky that you don't want to touch in sex, or that need extra care in sex? Like, you have to know these things about yourself, so when they come up in the moment of intimacy, you can go, oh, how cute, my rejection wound is showing up. Oh, how cute, my abandonment wound is showing up. Instead of going into reactivity and going into the wound. And then, no, you can't just go slap your partner across the face like, how dare you, right? Like, but in a different because that's abusive, but in a different context, like a slap across the face could be erotic. So it's like it's real subtlety that we're working with, which means you have to be attuned to yourself, essentially, which means being tied to your breath, breathing, paying attention to how you're feeling in your body, getting into your body. These are the simple first little steps, so that we can move out of intimacy that's a reaction or that's coming from a wound, and into something more artful and beautiful that can actually be healing, transformational, and just like fun.
Yeah.
I love how you're mentioning that there's layers. It takes time. You've got to get progressively, almost like in this this concentric sort of way, just keep getting more and more connected to the center as you kind of travel around it. Because right now, a lot of people, as Sophie talked about, they don't even know where that place is. They might believe that it exists. They might not even believe that it exists. And so now you got to kind of circle around, and you start with the mango over the sink going like, oh, I feel something there. And you start exploring it. And eventually maybe you get to those deeper places. If only there was like if only somebody had written books or like a book on this topic that we could recommend to people. You know anybody around women?
If we find anything, we'll put it in the show notes.
I love you guys so much.
We love you.
Hey, we love you so much, but also really like we live in a society that is so constrained.
Yeah.
And so now I get back to the, fuck like a goddess says, the multiple, like the ultimate circular argument about what it is that we're talking about here, which is like, yes, we're also talking about in the bedroom, but I feel like men and women have we've lost our place. And, I was listening, you mentioned David Data. I was listening to like a really short thing with him on his website about work and how if you're really, really centered, et cetera, then people want to have sex with you at work and all this stuff. And it was really interesting to listen to this conversation because he's actually making the point of you then have to show up very secure in boundaries. Like the argument that is really important that we make for everybody here is the point is not, like you said, to go back to the old school way of doing things from the global societal sort of way of looking at things. But it's also not for each of us to cut away our essence and say, well, you know what? I'm just going to be moderately me all the time in all settings because I can't say this here and I can't say that there.
Can't be too big.
Can't be too big. So I'll get as small as I can. So I'm invisible. Like that's also not the right answer. And so I do think we're trying to create a new version that is more true to our essence in different areas. And I think people are capable. I think we're able to say, hey, at work, certain things are okay and certain things are not okay because we all still have a life. We all still have relationships outside of work. We want to honor and defend and protect agency and all of that great stuff. And yet, even if we're one way at work, we can have a presence and bring something different to our intimate relationship that has magic and has some of that animalistic stuff that is just it's not relevant in some other settings. I think there's a huge power to that.
Oh no, yeah. The thing is, it's not just not relevant; it's not responsible. So, you see women who are like, "I've awakened my sexuality," and like, I'm going to share tons of nude pictures of myself because I'm so awakened. It's actually irresponsible in a way. And there's a beautiful article that someone wrote about this, about sex and social media. But, it's not responsible. Actually, you're creating like a lot of sometimes pain and lust in other people if you're a woman who's truly awakened. And I've done this. I've totally fucked up. So if you're a woman who's done this, we're fine. We're not awful people. But if we've awakened sort of erotically and sexually, and we're not being responsible with that energy, we're sort of leaking it and getting attention and likes and whatever it is, that's not the point. That actually leaks energy and it is contra to the sort of the sacredness of the intimacy with the partner. So the same with the man. If a man becomes more clear, more deep, more present, his presence is like fucking powerful and delicious. He's going to become delicious to all the other women who have come in contact with him, especially in today's world. And so he has to be primarily responsible with his presence. Like one of my teachers, he said at the gym, he would not look at any other women because he knew that the depth of his presence was so powerful that one look from him would make them probably like wet and be lusting after him. So then that woman would come back to the gym every day at the same time, hoping, And so it's interesting. And you've experienced this in the spiritual conscious community, people waking up using this sort of power in certain ways, whether it's sexual energy or like, just like the conscious power of like, I can do anything, I can make as much money. It's the same with awakening your sexual energy. It's like there's a reason that the church freaked out about sexual energy. There's a reason that in certain yogic traditions they say no, we don't work with that energy because it's so powerful. So when we're doing yoga around sexuality and using that energy and pulling it into a relationship consciously, we just have to be careful. We're walking around with a I like to say I'm a locked and loaded weapon at times, and like I've messed up and had sex with someone, and they're like not at the level of practice as me, and then they're like, "Give me more," and I'm like, "Shit, why did I do that?" Or they're, it's just a mess. So it's humbling in a way to see. You get to see your own shadows. Like as you'll become more conscious and you'll just be like, feel like you're a fucking rock star. And then, you'll realize, oh shit, like something will humble you. And then you'll, come back off the pedestal and the process will continue.
Sophie and I have had many opportunities to come off the pedestal.
It's good.
We now look at them as opportunities.
And I mean, I always have. It's humbling. Like
Of
it's,
course. Yeah.
like you said, all of it. The mistakes are gifts, you know?
Yeah. And then specifically when we're awakening our erotic or sexual energy, it's just like, it's a minefield. It's wild.
I feel like, and we will have many, many, many more conversations about this. I'm so excited about your book that just came out, because there's something, I told Sophie this the first time you walked into our house when we were shooting that first interview, because I didn't know you at all.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know you at all. But
I found her.
Yeah.
I retrieved her from the outside world.
Yes. And I remember saying to Sophie, there's this presence about you. And 2 years ago, I don't know that I would have known to have the conversation. Now I know to have the conversation about it. But I know for a fact that whether they're posting naked pictures of themselves online or not, whether they're having sex in their marriage or not, that I've met a lot of women that are not as in touch with that part of themselves. And it's a clear, like, as I'm sure, whether it's me or other men, that women have seen guys and they're like, that guy has this thing about him and that guy doesn't. And as you become more aware and more conscious of this work, you start being able to see the difference. And it's this really, really beautiful thing. And the idea that there's a book for women who are wrestling with this themselves and probably have wrestled with it for a long time, to be able to take that practice inward and go figure out not how to fix other people, not how to change the world, but rather how to become the most embodied, present version of their best selves, I think is really, really magical.
Hallelujah on that one.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And
I
so,
actually have a little paragraph in the book about that like when you start moving in these certain ways, that you become magnetic, and it doesn't matter what makeup you wear or not, or any of that, that you become this radiant woman in a room that, you know, like either people are maybe like curious about or repulsed by or excited by, you know, because that light from within really is coming up and out, you know. So
yeah.
Thank you. Thank
you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you for this.
So Sophie was bringing this up. You've been on before, so you've done the 5 questions, but it's been a couple of years, and I am totally into seeing if they've changed. So the number one question, what is the best advice you've ever received?
I think my dad, he would always, he still says, like, just like enjoy your life because it's going to speed by. Just enjoy every moment, because there's a lot of suffering to being a human. Just like when it's good, just like drink it up and drink up the good moments and let them fly by. And I think that like I've tried to live by that, but sometimes things get busy and I'm like, oh my God, I've been less present to the magnificence of life. I'm getting older, and death could be around the corner any day. And so just like really showing up and appreciating it all is definitely, I think that's the best advice. We'll take that from my dad.
I love it.
What about your proudest moment?
Most proud of. Can we come back to that one?
Yeah,
sure.
Of course.
Well, now on the flip side of that, one of our questions, what's been one of your most difficult moments to date?
My mom was institutionalized and suicidal, and did electric shock therapy. Those a few years that were very, very difficult for me. She like went bankrupt and lost her home and got really sick, and it was the same time as I was making films in New York and working with Vice and CAA. And so at the moment that I was supposed to be the happiest, I was actually kind of simultaneously the saddest. So that was definitely, those years were really hard, experiencing the depth of her suffering.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. She's
doing great now, though. She's super happy. She and my dad have remarried after they went through all that. And now that she's happy, I feel super relieved. You know?
Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you for sharing that latter part too. We talk about the work that we do taking a lot out of us sometimes and requiring a lot. What are some self-care non-negotiables in your life that you know you have to put in place in order to be able to show up this way for the people you do work with?
Well, I'm a real, I'm a real like spoiled gal with myself. Like I spoil myself. Like I eat good. Well, I eat the food that I love, and I treat myself well, and I think that that's taken time and it's taken money, and I don't second guess like spending money on good food, and you know, just care for my body and time. Time is like of essence. So like, I take time away from the computer and the phone. Normally I travel a lot, and that's like how I really fill my cup. No, I did travel twice in the last month to gorgeous places and nature, but even that was like not enough. It felt like, but nature, being in nature, is everything for me. Like, I'm gonna definitely be moving into a more nature-oriented life, but like swimming naked in a waterfall, being in a field, hiking a mountain, those things are non-negotiables. Usually swimming, but when I moved to California, I thought, oh, I'll swim, and I don't like swimming in the Pacific Ocean. I like swimming in clear or like Caribbean waters. So,
Yeah. Warmer water.
yeah.
You said you don't scrounge on like taking care of yourself. Do you just give our people examples? Like we know our people love like action, but like what are some of the things that you go, oh, I've got to do that regularly?
I take Epsom salt baths. I put oil diffusers in every room. I have salt lamps in every room, all of that kind of thing. I get massages when I can. What else do I do? I just eat well, listen to my body, what my body needs. I laugh. I drink wine and I laugh, usually with friends, and like sing. And like that to me is an important part of mental and emotional health, is being with people you love and eating well and drinking well and dancing well, which has killed me during this pandemic nearly. Knock on wood, I'm alive and well. But which is, we'll say, a part of my soul tissue, to be more exact, because I love being with friends and dancing and playing, and I love dressing myself well. I love the art of adornment and like putting on something that evokes a certain aspect of myself, right? And like playing there. And so yeah, the last few years I have been living alone and not in a partnership, so I've like really mastered the art of like treating myself like a queen and a goddess so much that I'm like, oh shit, what's a man gonna do when he sees how much money I spent on dresses?
That's your prerogative, girl.
I know.
And again, like that comes back to that guilt. Like I have so many moms in my community, my dearest friends, who just feel so guilty about loving themselves. And I'm like, that is my priority. Like I wrote a list today on Instagram. I thought about editing it, and I was like, fuck that shit. It said like my priorities: mental well-being, my body and health, my children and family. And I was like, yeah, maybe I would rearrange. I'm like, but not really.
No, because you gotta put the oxygen mask on you first.
Yes, oxygen mask on me, and without me being sane in mind, body, and fulfilled, not just sane, but like loving the shit out of myself so that I can hold space for all of these other things and people. Like non-negotiable, no guilt, no shame.
Yeah, and I love watching moms that I like coach kind of reclaim some of those things. They don't have to be huge. Like it'll just be like these little things that shift their relationship to their body or their husband or time or art or poetry or music, and it's just so inspiring to watch.
Totally.
I'm like ready for the opposite. I'm like, okay, I've had enough time to like shower myself. Goddess time.
Totally. Okay, so last but not least, our podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
Love and connection more than anything.
Love it.
Yeah,
Us too.
I really love being around people I love, and just connecting heart to heart, not head to head. I mean, I'm an intellectual kind of a person too, but I love the marriage, heart to heart, head to head, body to body, skin to skin, connecting. All those connections are juicy. Spirit to spirit, like give me all of it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Thank you so much.
We love you so much.
So excited for this book.
Okay, and I'll have to phone back about what I'm most proud about when I hit that moment of pride.
It's fine. We get it. We're proud of you.
Yeah, we're proud of you. Maybe this book.
This book.
Maybe this book is one of the things that you're proud of.
Maybe, yeah. The Mother Teresa in me is like, oh, darlings, there's nothing that I'm proud about. It's not about that.
Yeah, exactly. I know. You can take a little ego back. It's all good. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on with us. Can't wait to just see this book blow up and all the women you're going to help. It's so beautiful.
Oh,
We love
you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.